Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
So when I talk to friends, family, anybody who says they're going through some challenges and they've tried a lot of different things, maybe energy healing, whatever it might be, medication, and it hasn't worked, I always say, have you tried hypnotherapy? Because I found it really does work. And that's only in the past few months. It was a game changer for me. I wish I knew her back then. I know her now, and she's a fantastic hypnotherapist. Joy Shakespeare is on the program with us. Hi, Joy. How are you?
I'm very well, Steve. Thank you. All is well here?
Yes. Well, when you say here, we have to say live and direct from the UK, specifically Oxford, right?
That's right, near Oxford, which is about 40 miles northwest of London.
Fabulous. I have to ask, a lot of times, even overseas, your weather, what's it like over there in Fahrenheit?
In Fahrenheit, it's probably about 50 degrees.
Okay, well, here we're in the New York area and we're floating around there too, maybe like 53 degrees right now.
Mm, Yeah, it's not cold and it's been bright and sunny all day.
Terrific. Yeah, same thing here. Well, let's bring the sun out for a lot of people dealing with some challenges and that could be anywhere from people looking to stop smoking, lose weight, have anxiety, fears, so many other challenges. What are some of the other things that hypnotherapy can help people with?
Well, the things I find people come to me most often with are anxiety and phobias, things that they're afraid of. Those are the two most common things. And the phobias are fear of spiders, fear of flying, fear of all kinds of irrational things. But anxiety is the big one. But people find dealing with their experience on a daily basis difficult, and they want to reduce their stress levels.
I met somebody, let's see here, about 4 months ago, and she had lots of anxiety. And it was from a trauma that took place about a year and change ago. And prior to that, she used to have a little bit of anxiety, but it exasperated it, this one
Mhm.
situation. And I said, try hypnotherapy. And we went from her going to a restaurant and actually saying, I don't know if I can be here. I might have to leave. And we always had this rule. If you have to leave, you say, we go, no problem. Had hypnotherapy, one session, actually two. Somebody was local she went to, don't feel it was that good. Found somebody for her, like yourself, did it virtually. And sure enough, another couple of weeks after that, at a restaurant, no problem. At
Yeah,
another gathering, people around, no problem. And I would even say on the 10 scale, give me, 1 to 10, 10 being we have a problem, got to run, got to get out of here now. Um, she'd be floating previously at like a 5 or a 6 after hypnotherapy, a 0, sometimes a
mm,
-1, maybe a 1, depending, on the day situation. So it really does make a difference, like you said, for anxiety. It's amazing.
yes, it is. And one of the things I do routinely is teach people self hypnosis so that in the future you put me out of business, that you can do it for yourself. And I think that's a really useful skill. I wish they'd teach it in schools.
Agreed. There's so many things they should be teaching in school. They don't teach it. When we say self-hypnosis, I don't want to give you your secret sauce away here, but
Mhm.
how do we do that? How do you self-hypnotize yourself? How do you get into that state?
Okay. Well, it's not something I can teach you in 2 minutes, but it is something I can teach you in an hour. And it's something I do routinely over a couple of sessions for my clients if they want to. And how you do it is, first of all, you learn what the fully relaxed hypnotic state feels like. You find that space within yourself so that you have mind memory and body memory. And then you can find a way to find it quickly whenever you need it, usually through some kind of trigger. And when you can do that, then you learn how to give yourself the positive messages, those lovely little affirmations, those helpful suggestions. And when you can do that, you've learned.
So if I'm hearing you right, Joy, we need to find the happy place. Call it that,
That's it.
where you are in a, call it a trance, hypnotic state, however you want to describe it.
Mm.
And a lot of times, as I understand it, right before you go to sleep, you're actually in that state.
Yes, you are. And in fact, we're in that state quite often during the day as well. I don't know if you're ever in a place where somebody can call your name, but you've been so deeply absorbed in perhaps a video game or a TV program that you don't hear them. You're in an altered state of consciousness.
Mhm.
Other people, they drive a familiar route and they get to where they're going and they've no idea because they have no memory of doing it. And yet they were operating, they didn't crash, they were fine. These are altered states of consciousness. And a trance, hypnotic trance, is just another altered state of consciousness, so that you are, in fact, aware and fully awake, but you are in a place where that you are so relaxed you're able to do different things and react differently.
I'm so glad we started talking about hypnotherapy in the way we did, because you just proved that we can put ourselves in that state. And when you hypnotize somebody, all you're doing is helping us get to that state. Whereby a lot of people think that, oh, the hypnotist is doing things and they're taking over your mind. No, you're just facilitating, you're helping us get to that point where we can put the positive affirmations in and, call it attack the problem, whatever the problem is.
Yes, that's exactly right, Steve. And doing it that way, it means that it's nothing to be afraid of because it's something that we all experience, as you say, on a regular basis. It's something nothing to be afraid of. Nobody controls you, and I cannot make anybody become a chicken. I promise. That's a trick. It's a magic trick. I can't do that, and I won't. Even if I could, I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah. And nobody's going to run out and rob a bank.
Absolutely no way. Not going to happen.
Because it can happen. The only way that could ever happen is if somebody genuinely wants to rob a bank. All right. So and it's not that you're going to tell them to do it, they're just going to do it anyway.
That's exactly right. Because nobody can make you do anything you don't want to do, only what you do want to do. But you sometimes need to find that what you want to do deep down in your deepest needs and your deepest desires, which is why hypnotherapy is really useful because it helps you find that place. And it's also really useful because that's where your real fears, your traumas lie. And when you treat them through hypnotherapy, you can make them go away.
When you say go away, do they go away forever? Can they creep back? I mean, everybody's different, every situation's different.
Yeah. Okay. And yes, every situation is different and every person is different. It depends on what it is. So that, for example, you don't ever want to take away somebody's memories. You just want those memories to be memories rather than a daily lived experience. So, in other words, with your friend who was dealing with a traumatic situation, the reason she couldn't deal perhaps with being in crowded places in a restaurant was that she would have a flashback, a memory that was intrusive. But if she could just remember that something bad happened in the past, it deals with it in the past. It's just a memory. It's not good. It's still there, but it's not happening now. And that's what hypnotherapy can do about trauma.
Hmm.
Move it to where it should be, in the memory, and not now.
And the trauma that I described, and we don't need to go into detail,
Mm,
it was definitely justified. I can totally understand
mm.
why she would feel that way, why she would have anxiety, why different situations may present themselves in different ways, without a doubt. So, what you're saying,
Mm.
Joy, is that the memory is still there, but it is a memory that was then. Let me clarify that. You can distinguish between the two. That was then, this is now, as opposed to the then creeping into the now when it's not the truth.
That's actually right, completely right.
Hmm.
Because we want to remember things, we want them in their proper place in our brains as memories, What we don't want is for those memories to intrude on our current now and get in the way of our daily life. So that what I want as a therapist, is to help people live happier and more fulfilled lives, free from all that's holding them back.
Let's say you were in a past relationship and things were good for a period of time, then things changed, and then you moved on from that relationship. Can hypnotherapy, number one, help you there, not to get triggered when you think of those memories, but can it also make those memories, best description, minimized? So they're there. If you want to recall them, they're there, but they're kind of like off to the side in a file cabinet. I always say, throw it in a file cabinet, close the door, and they're there.
That's right. Like putting them in a photo album and putting that photo album on the shelf. But you're right. Yes, you can do that. And the good thing about doing that with memories that are hard and difficult is that hypnotherapy is a wonderful tool, because you can actually go back in time in your imagination and you can reassure your past self. And doing that can clear up some of the things that are happening now in the present. And that also helps you move on with your life, have a better life right now.
Do you find joy in working with people and talking with people that, let's say, something happened in their childhood and that is a thread that follows them all through their life to the point where they're here now, and maybe they made bad choices along the way, maybe they didn't deal with situations as they probably should have because of that one thing back then?
Yes, that happens a lot. And I see a lot of people who had trauma or difficult situations in their childhood that they've never fully resolved. Quite often they don't remember all the detail of that, and they don't need to. And I would never ask them about that, because we don't want to re-traumatize people. We don't want to go over old ground. What we do want to do is to give them a happier, more fulfilled life now, by dealing with, first of all, the impact that childhood experiences has had on them. So teaching them the tools to deal with it. And secondly, if they want to, we can go back and just get rid of the cause in a way that is helpful to them. It's only in your imagination. It's not real. We can't really change the past. What we can change is the future.
Interesting. I love the way you speak about hypnotherapy because you're so clear and direct and it's just very easy to understand.
Mm.
Do you encounter a lot of people that don't know why they act the way they do?
Sure. And I think that we all know that. We all know that we found ourselves doing something that we said we wouldn't do, as perhaps we have wandered to the fridge and taken something out and eaten it before we've actually thought about that. We know we've said something when we didn't mean to say that, but it just came upon us. We all know those times when our subconscious desires, needs, thoughts have driven our conscious minds, actions, behaviors. And that is the most important thing about hypnotherapy. We know that. So why don't we go back and talk to that subconscious mind and say, okay, how can we address this differently? Which is where habits and addictions can be dealt with in hypnotherapy really successfully.
Excuse me. Let's talk about addiction.
Sure.
Tell me more about how you
Okay.
help somebody.
So let's say a very straightforward, simple addiction that a lot of people have to cigarettes. That's a very simple one that a lot of people have. So with smoking, it's, well, where did that come from? Why is it so good? Why does it become automatic? Why is it becoming an addiction? And there's a physical dependency, but there's something much more important, which is a psychological dependency. And if we address the psychological dependency, we all know that the physical dependency will fall away. You're going to have a pretty rough couple of days. But after that, it's the psychological one that keeps you reaching for that packet. So, in order to address the addiction that's in your mind and not in your body, what we need to do is to change the way you think about it. Use your own motivation, use your own belief system, your own drivers in order to challenge that. And if you do that successfully, stopping smoking is a one-session thing. Other addictions are more complex. Alcohol and other drugs can be much more difficult to treat because there are other sorts of dependencies going on, but they're possible and they do work. Gambling, sex addiction, shopping addictions. I've seen people with all of those things, and those things too can be overcome. They're not one session because we need to dig a little deeper. To be honest, the one that's the most difficult is the weight, is the eating, because we all have to eat, otherwise we'll die. And that's more tricky.
Interesting. Yeah, because when you isolate let's say the cigarettes or something else, it's not in your face anymore.
That's right.
So you have to eat. We often hear the people describe themselves as being addictive personalities. So that may be an addiction to cigarettes or substance abuse or alcohol. Does that go back to one central event or trauma? Where does it, does it begin somewhere and then they have those addictions along the way?
To be perfectly honest, there are lots of theories about this. Is there such a thing as an addictive personality? Is there a single cause for all addiction? I doubt it. I think the jury's out, to be honest. I don't know. But what I will say is that we have to be very careful by removing one addiction that you don't perhaps encourage another. So what you need to do is address the reason for the addiction using the person's own motivation, their own belief system, not something that you're imposing on them. And if you do that, you're not going to get the risk of a different addiction coming in.
Okay, so what you're saying is pick one, work on that, and see where you go from there.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah. Do you think would you say there's a very strong possibility that they're all in one person, they're all connected to one central situation?
It could be.
It could be.
Everybody's different. I'll give you a really good example. For some people, where they have problems with how they see themselves, what we call their self-esteem, then maybe they will be addicted to a number of different behaviors that will enhance their self-esteem in their own eyes. So that, for example, they may think they're not interesting, so they will start to drink more alcohol. Or they may feel that they are not interesting or they're not worthy, and therefore they're not worthy of having good relationships. So they'll get into abusive relationships. Those are having the same root, those two addiction behaviors. But again, I'll say you go back to where that person is and you look at what's causing it for them. I'm not entirely convinced that there is an addictive personality, but I do think that if there is a root cause, an issue, if you need to go there and look at that.
Interesting. We do have somebody asking a question. We're going to get to that for just a moment, but I wanted to, while we're talking about anxiety, it just brought back a memory. I know someone who is forever picking people in relationships that have anxiety. Like somehow they seek them out. They're like a radar, like a magnet to others that have major anxiety issues. And for some reason, the friend of mine was always picking those kinds of people. Why do you think that might be? And can that be helped?
And I think that you're describing a pattern of behavior.
Exactly.
So if you're describing a pattern of behavior, it's really interesting to find out when that started and what is the gain that they get from that.
Or do they? I don't have an answer, but I don't
They
know.
will get a gain. That's why they do it. There will be something that they get from it. So it may well be that they feel good when they're nurturing. That's an example. It might be that they like to feel better than the person that they're looking after who has anxiety. There could be all kinds of reasons. But if there's a pattern, let's go have a look.
Interesting. Interesting.
Mm.
And a friend of mine that told me that this has been a kind of habitual situation, doesn't want to deal with people that have anxiety, but maybe there's something there. And why
Oh,
do
yeah.
people gravitate toward my friend? Or he finds, I don't know. I don't have that answer.
Yeah, and that will be part of the bit of our subconscious mind that we don't understand that's driving the behavior. Just like the person going to the fridge and taking something out and eating it when they didn't really mean to.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly the same thing.
So we have Teresa checking in from, is it? Yeah, it's Bronx, New York. And instant feedback, Steve, gmail.com is how she reached us. She says, I have a fear of being alone, and I believe it's because my father left our family when I was very, very young. Is this something that you could help me out with?
The answer is yes, that a fear of being alone is something that a lot of people have. So it's not unusual. You've identified there a potential cause. So what we need to do is to think about what would make it better. Would you want to go back and reassure your younger self? Would it help to understand more about what happened when you were a child? Or would you prefer to learn techniques that you can use now to make you comfortable with those times when you're alone, even to enjoy them?
It's a hard question to answer, Joy. Like if you presented that to somebody, I don't know what I would say. It's like, I maybe I should go back. And by the way, I when I got hypnotized, that I did go back and confront my younger self. No words to describe what that was like. It was amazing. It was like watching a movie, but I was in the movie. Very emotional. But I knew I needed to go back to my childhood. But in Teresa's situation, now how would somebody make that determination? Which would be more effective, to go back to their childhood or to find coping techniques now?
Okay, and that is something that I think is a really interesting question. Therapy is not something that I do to people, it is something that we do together. And the person who is in the room virtually or physically with me is an absolutely critical part of deciding where to go. And we talk about what are the pros, what are the cons, how do you feel? Let's try this first, see how you feel, and then if that didn't go so well for you, we'll try something else. And I have ways of communicating with people when they're in a hypnotic trance or state. And I get people to talk to me in virtual ways so that I know exactly how they are, so that we keep it completely safe. That's the important thing. Safe.
We have about a minute left, and I'm very curious in learning that why does it take a number of sessions for different things? For example, let's say anxiety, probably going to take a number of sessions. It's not going to be like a smoking situation where potentially it could be one hypnotherapy session. Why does it take longer?
Okay, it just takes longer for some things than others, I've experienced. I'm not into long-term therapy. I suppose the longest I've ever seen anybody was 12 sessions. That gives you an idea.
Okay.
But for a phobia, depending on how severe it is, it's 3, 4, 5 sessions. For severe anxiety, we may well need 10. But again, it's up to the person in the room with me to talk about how it's going. And we use different scaling techniques to say, okay, Where do you want to get to? It's a bad 10 at the moment. Where would you like to be? Let's bring it down until it's, do you want to be a 3? Or would a 5 be enough? And we can work it through like that. But everybody's different, and that's the most important thing.
You found, let's say somebody goes for 2 sessions and feels, yeah, I think I got it. And then occasionally do you get a call or an email, let's say 6 months later, and somebody says, I'm still getting triggered here. Can we do another session? Does that happen?
Yeah, that happens.
Mm.
And actually, what happens more often is they come back to me with something slightly different.
Okay.
And I say, well, that's okay, because if you go and see your doctor because you've got a bad foot, you don't think that he's failed because 6 months later you've now got a headache. So things come up for people. I do see people on more than one occasion over time.
Well, to your point, somebody might say, wow, working with you was so beneficial for this one thing. And then you start realizing the other things that are going on in your life. And wow, how does somebody find you? How do they reach out to you?
Well, the easiest thing is joyshakespeare.co.uk. And that website address is almost ready to go live. But if you put in Joy Shakespeare, hypnotherapy, you'll find me.
Final question, Joy. Shakespeare, real last name?
It's a good name and it is mine.
Oh, it's fantastic. And people wonder, my last name is Harper. Is that like a made up, radio name? No, that's my real last name.
Yeah, real last name.
I think we both got lucky in that.
We did indeed. I'm very fortunate. I love my name.
Joy, a delight, true delight talking with you, and just your passion and your insight for helping people is amazing. Look forward next time we get a chance to talk.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.